The state's most powerful tool is data aggregation, often starting with your face. Surveillance cameras rely on charge-coupled device or complementary metal-oxide-semiconductor sensors. These sensors convert photons into electrical charge, forming the image. Overwhelming the sensor with excessive light is the fundamental principle of dazzling. A focused beam of coherent light, even low power, can saturate the sensor's pixels, rendering the image useless for recognition algorithms. This saturation is not merely brightness, it causes charge overflow, known as blooming, which corrupts surrounding pixels. Effective dazzling exploits the sensor's spectral sensitivity, often peaking in the near-infrared range, which is invisible to the human eye, but crucial for night vision and many surveillance cameras. This immediate physical disruption bypasses algorithmic complexity entirely. Facial recognition systems do not store photographs, they map geometric relationships. The system extracts nodal points, such as the distance between the eyes, the depth of the eye sockets, and the shape of the jawline, creating a unique faceprint. This faceprint is a numerical vector stored in a database. Deep learning neural networks compare the live vector against millions of stored vectors, calculating a probability score for identity match. Modern systems utilize three-dimensional mapping and thermal imaging to defeat simple two-dimensional masks. The goal of counter-surveillance is not just to obscure the face, but to prevent the camera from capturing enough distinct nodal points to generate a usable vector in the first place. Dazzling works by exploiting the dynamic range limitations of the camera sensor. When a pixel receives light exceeding its full well capacity, the excess charge spills into adjacent pixels, creating the blooming effect. This localized saturation destroys the high-contrast edges and fine details necessary for nodal point extraction. The laser beam must be precisely aimed at the camera lens, maximizing the irradiance on the sensor plane. Even a milliwatt laser, when focused, delivers sufficient energy density to blind the sensor temporarily. The effectiveness depends on the camera's aperture size and the distance, following the inverse square law for light intensity. Surveillance cameras often use near-infrared illumination, typically 850 or 940 nanometers, for covert night operation. Lasers operating in this invisible spectrum are ideal for dazzling because they do not alert human operators or bystanders. However, near-infrared lasers pose significant eye hazards because the blink reflex is not triggered, leading to retinal damage before the victim realizes exposure. Visible green lasers around 532 nanometers are highly effective due to peak human eye sensitivity, but their visibility compromises stealth. Choosing a wavelength that matches the camera's sensitivity curve while minimizing human risk requires careful technical assessment.
A functional dazzler requires a high-quality laser diode, a collimating lens system to maintain beam coherence over distance, and a stable power source. Beam divergence, the spreading of the beam over distance, must be minimized. A divergence of less than 0.5 milliradians is necessary for effective long-range targeting. Pulsed operation, rather than continuous wave, can increase peak power output while managing thermal load, making the device smaller and more portable. The housing must allow for rapid, precise aiming, often incorporating a low-power visible aiming laser bore-sighted with the high-power infrared dazzling beam. Passive countermeasures, like specialized makeup or adversarial clothing, rely on confusing the recognition algorithm by introducing noise or disrupting feature detection. These methods are often defeated by updated algorithms trained on the countermeasure patterns. Active countermeasures, specifically dazzling, physically prevent data acquisition at the hardware level. Dazzling is a denial-of-service attack against the sensor itself. While passive methods offer constant protection, active dazzling provides targeted, temporary disruption only when surveillance is confirmed, minimizing exposure and legal risk associated with constant obfuscation. Surveillance manufacturers respond to dazzling with countermeasures. These include high dynamic range sensors that capture detail across a wider light spectrum and spectral filtering that blocks common dazzling wavelengths while allowing ambient light through. Advanced software uses image processing techniques like deblooming algorithms to computationally reconstruct the image data corrupted by charge overflow. Furthermore, multi-sensor arrays capture redundant data from different angles, requiring multiple simultaneous dazzling sources to achieve full denial of service. The arms race shifts towards frequency hopping and adaptive power output in Dazzler design. The deployment of ubiquitous facial recognition fundamentally alters the nature of public space, transforming anonymity into constant identification. Anarchist theory views this as a core mechanism of state control, enforcing compliance through the threat of retrospective identification and punishment. Using Dazzlers, even low-power ones, often falls into ambiguous legal territory, potentially classified as assault, obstruction, or misuse of a laser device, depending on jurisdiction and intent. The legal risk is weighed against the ethical imperative of maintaining personal sovereignty and resisting the panoptic surveillance state. Dazzling serves as a direct action tactic of refusal, disrupting the infrastructure of data capitalism and state monitoring. It is a localized, non-violent intervention that renders specific surveillance nodes temporarily inert. This strategy focuses on decentralizing resistance, empowering individuals to reclaim their visual privacy without relying on legislative change or corporate compliance. The goal is to increase the operational cost and decrease the reliability of surveillance networks, forcing the state to invest disproportionately in maintaining control over public visibility. The next generation of surveillance will likely incorporate short-wave infrared sensors, which are less susceptible to current near-infrared dazzlers. Future resistance technology must move towards adaptive optics and frequency-agile dazzling systems that rapidly shift wavelengths to defeat spectral filters. The ultimate goal remains the development of non-harmful, highly effective methods that ensure visual anonymity in public spaces, maintaining the fundamental anarchist principle of freedom from coercive observation and identification by the state apparatus.